I was dating Megan for 3 years before she became my fiancée. Everything seemed perfect in our life together. I had a successful career as a software engineer. We had just bought a beautiful apartment, and we were planning our wedding for next summer. Then one evening while I was cooking dinner, Megan walked in and casually said, "I am moving in with Anthony. We are having a baby together." I surprised myself with my calm reply, "Congratulations." Before I tell you how my perfect life shattered in seconds, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how I turned this heartbreak into the best decision of my life. I always considered myself a fairly ordinary guy with an extraordinary work ethic. Growing up in a middle-class family in Michigan taught me the value of hard work and integrity. My parents stayed married for 35 years until my father passed away from cancer 5 years ago. Their relationship was my blueprint for what love should look like: respectful, supportive, and unwavering. After graduating with my computer science degree, I landed a job at a promising tech startup in Seattle. The hours were long, but the work was fulfilling. I saved aggressively, invested wisely, and by 27, I had a comfortable financial cushion and a career trajectory that made me proud. What I did not have was someone to share it with. That changed when I attended my college roommate Jake's wedding. I was a groomsman, feeling slightly out of place in the rented tuxedo that was a bit too tight around the shoulders. During the reception, I spotted Megan across the dance floor. She was a bridesmaid, a childhood friend of the bride. Our eyes met while the couple was having their first dance, and she smiled at me in a way that made my heart skip. "You look like you could use some company," she said, approaching me with 2 champagne flutes. "I am Megan." "Kate," I replied, taking the offered glass. "Thanks for rescuing me from standing awkwardly alone." We talked through the entire reception. Megan worked in marketing, loved classic movies, and had a laugh that made everyone around her smile. By the end of the night, I had her number, and within a week, we went on our first date. The next 3 years were filled with memories I thought would last a lifetime. We went hiking in the Olympic National Park, spent a week exploring New York City, and had Sunday dinner with my mom whenever we could make the trip back to Michigan. Megan met all my friends and I met hers. Our social circles merged seamlessly, and everyone commented on how perfect we seemed together. 8 months ago, on our 3-year anniversary, I proposed. We were at the restaurant where we had our first date, and I had arranged for the waiter to bring the ring with dessert. Megan cried happy tears as she said yes, and the entire restaurant applauded. That night, as we lay in bed discussing our future, I felt complete. What Megan did not know was the financial sacrifices I had been making. The engagement ring had cost 3 months of my salary. 6 months before that, I had helped her buy a new car when her old one died unexpectedly. I put the down payment on it and co-signed the loan, making the monthly payments myself as an unofficial engagement present. I also paid for her to finish her graduate degree in marketing, which she had put on hold due to financial constraints. I never mentioned these things because I did not want her to feel indebted to me. I wanted to be her partner, her support system. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. About 6 months ago, Megan's behavior began to change subtly. She started going out more with work friends I had never met. Her phone would ping at odd hours and she would smile at the screen before quickly turning it over. When I asked about these new friends, she would give vague answers and change the subject. That was when Anthony entered our story. Megan mentioned him casually at first. A new hire in her department, someone she had been assigned to train. I did not think much of it until his name started coming up more frequently in conversation. "Anthony showed me this amazing lunch spot today. Anthony has such interesting ideas for the Johnson campaign." Anthony invited the team for drinks on Friday to celebrate the new client. The late nights at work became more frequent. The weekend team-building workshops multiplied. I tried to be understanding. Megan had recently been promoted, and I knew she was eager to prove herself in her new role, but a nagging feeling of unease began to grow. One Tuesday evening, I decided to surprise Megan at her office with dinner. She had texted that she would be working late with her team on a pitch. When I arrived at her building, the security guard informed me that most of the marketing department had left hours ago. Still, I thought perhaps Megan and a few others were in a conference room somewhere, so I called her. She did not pick up. On a hunch, I drove to a restaurant we had been meaning to try located near her office. That was where I saw them. Megan and a man I assumed was Anthony were seated in a corner booth. They were not with a team. They were alone and his hand was covering hers on the table. I watched as she laughed at something. He said her face animated in a way I had not seen in months. I did not confront them. I drove home, the takeout food growing cold beside me. When Megan came home that night, I asked her how the pitch preparation had gone. She launched into a detailed story about spreadsheets and client feedback, never once mentioning dinner or Anthony. The lie hung between us, but I could not bring myself to call her out on it. Instead, I asked her directly if there was something going on that I should know about. "What are you talking about?" she replied, her expression a perfect mask of confusion. "Is something wrong? Is there something happening between you and Anthony?" I finally asked. Her response was a masterclass in denial. She seemed genuinely hurt by the accusation, explaining that Anthony was just a colleague and friend, that they worked closely together, and that I was being paranoid. She even shed a few tears, asking why I did not trust her. By the end of the conversation, I was the one apologizing for jumping to conclusions. Looking back, I realized how skilled she was at manipulation. I convinced myself that what I had seen was innocent, that my imagination had run wild. To make up for my unfair accusations, I suggested we set a wedding date and start looking at venues. Megan agreed enthusiastically, and I thought we had moved past this rough patch. I could not have been more wrong. I remember the day my life changed with perfect clarity. It was a Thursday, and Seattle was enjoying a rare streak of perfect spring weather. I woke up early, went for a run, and stopped by a bakery to bring home Megan's favorite pastries. She had an important client meeting that morning, so she had already left by the time I returned home. I showered, dressed, and headed to my office, where I had a productive day working on a new software project. During my lunch break, I called several wedding venues we had shortlisted. I managed to secure weekend appointments to visit 3 of them, and I was excited to surprise Megan with the news. I even ordered a bottle of her favorite champagne to celebrate once we picked a venue. Everything felt back on track. I arrived home before Megan and decided to cook her favorite pasta dish. I had music playing and was chopping vegetables when I heard her key in the door. She called out a casual hello as she set her bags down in the entryway. "How was your day?" I asked as she walked into the kitchen. She looked radiant, almost glowing, and I felt a surge of love for her. "Pretty good," she replied, opening the refrigerator and grabbing a bottle of water. She took a sip, then leaned against the counter, watching me cook. Her casual posture gave no indication of what was coming next. "I need to tell you something," she said, her tone so matter of fact that I continued chopping the bell pepper without looking up. "What is that?" I asked, still focused on the knife in my hand. "I am moving in with Anthony. We are having a baby together." The knife stilled in my hand. I looked up to find her watching me with a strange expression. Not guilt or remorse, but almost curiosity, as if she was conducting an experiment and waiting to observe the results. In that moment, I felt as though time had stopped. The music playing in the background faded to a distant hum. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The kitchen suddenly seemed too bright, too sharp around the edges. Despite the chaos erupting inside me, my exterior remained strangely calm. "Congratulations." I heard myself say the word falling from my lips before I had even consciously formed it. Megan's brow furrowed slightly, clearly, not expecting this response. She had likely anticipated tears, shouting, or pleading. Normal reactions to having your world destroyed in 9 casual words. My calmness seemed to throw her off balance. "You are not upset?" she asked, taking another sip of water. "I am processing," I replied honestly, setting the knife down carefully. "How far along are you?" "About 8 weeks," she said, her hand briefly touching her stomach. "We were not planning it, but Anthony is thrilled. He asked me to move in this weekend." The conversation that followed was surreal. Megan spoke about her relationship with Anthony as if discussing a change in the weather, something natural and inevitable. They had been seeing each other for 4 months. She had not meant for it to happen, but they had connected on a deeper level. Anthony made her feel alive in ways she had never experienced before. As she spoke, she moved around our apartment, the home we had built together, gathering items into a small overnight bag. A toothbrush, her favorite pajamas, the expensive face cream I had bought her for Christmas. I have felt stuck for a while now. She continued, seemingly oblivious to my silence. "You and we are comfortable together, but there is no spark anymore. Anthony challenges me. He sees me in a way you never have." Each word was a knife, but I remained standing, breathing, existing somehow, while my future disintegrated. A strange clarity was beginning to emerge through the shock. This woman calmly packing while delivering these devastating revelations was not the person I thought I knew. Perhaps she never had been. "I will come back this weekend to get the rest of my things," she said, zipping up her bag. She slipped off her engagement ring and placed it on the kitchen counter with a small click that echoed in the quiet apartment. "I hope we can be mature about this. I still care about you, Cade." She walked to the door, then turned back. "This is for the best you know. Someday, you will thank me for having the courage to end things before we made a bigger mistake." And then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft finality. I stood frozen in the kitchen for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The pasta water boiled over, hissing as it hit the stovetop. That small domestic crisis broke my paralysis. I moved the pot off the heat, then sank to the floor, my back against the cabinets, and finally allowed the tidal wave of emotion to crash over me. I did not cry. Instead, a strange hollow laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. The sheer audacity of it all. The pregnancy, the casual delivery, her expectation of maturity and understanding, struck me as absurdly cruel. I sat there laughing until my sides hurt, until the laughter turned into something else entirely. A sound of grief so primal, I did not recognize it as coming from me. The initial shock lasted about 30 minutes. I sat on the kitchen floor, alternating between numbness and flashes of searing pain. But something unexpected began to happen as the reality of the situation sank in. A sense of clarity emerged through the chaos of my emotions. I realized I had a choice. I could collapse under the weight of this betrayal, or I could take control of what happened next. I chose the latter. With mechanical precision, I stood up and reached for my phone. The first call was to the jeweler who was creating our custom wedding bands. The engagement ring Megan had returned was only temporary. I had been working with a designer to create something unique for both of us. I canceled the order, grateful that I had only paid the deposit so far. Next, I called my bank. Megan and I had opened a joint checking account after getting engaged, though we maintained separate savings. I explained the situation to the sympathetic customer service representative and removed Megan from the account. I transferred my portion of the funds to my personal account, leaving her share untouched. For the next hour, I methodically changed passwords on every shared account we had: Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, our utility bills, even the food delivery services we used. I removed her as an authorized user on my credit cards. I changed the password to our shared photo cloud storage. With each small action, I felt a piece of my power returning. Then came the car. Megan's car was financed in my name, with me making all the payments. A quick call to the dealership confirmed what I already knew. Since the loan was in my name, the car legally belonged to me. I arranged for them to repossess it the following day, explaining that the driver was no longer authorized to use the vehicle. Around 8:00 p.m., I called Scott, my friend from law school who now worked in family law. He agreed to meet me for breakfast the following morning to discuss protecting my assets and ensuring Megan could not claim any ownership of my property or investments. Document everything, he advised, and do not communicate with her, except in writing. One of the hardest calls was to Megan's parents. They had always treated me like a son, and I genuinely loved them. I kept the explanation brief and factual, without embellishment or emotional manipulation. "Megan has left me for someone named Anthony," I said. "She is pregnant with his child. I thought you should hear it from me rather than through the grapevine." Her mother gasped. Her father asked if I was certain. I confirmed I was, thanked them for always being kind to me, and ended the call before my composure could crack. By 9:00 p.m., my phone was buzzing constantly with messages from friends. Word had spread quickly, and my support system rallied around me. Jake offered to fly in from Chicago. My neighbor Lisa knocked on my door with a bottle of whiskey and a frozen lasagna. I appreciated their kindness, but asked for space to process things on my own for a few days. At 1:37 p.m., the first text from Megan arrived. My card was declined at the restaurant. "What did you do?" I did not respond. At 1:15 p.m., "Call me immediately. We need to discuss finances like adults." Again, I did not respond. At midnight, a string of messages flooded in. Megan had discovered her car was being repossessed. She was furious, calling me petty and vindictive. She threatened legal action. She accused me of trying to control her. With each message, her tone grew more desperate and less coherent. I silenced my phone and tried to sleep. I must have dozed off eventually because I was awakened by pounding on my door at precisely 2:13 a.m. 6 hours after Megan had walked out of my life. Through the peephole, I could see her standing in the hallway, mascara streaking down her face, hair disheveled. I opened the door but kept the security chain engaged. "What do you want, Megan?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Anthony kicked me out." She sobbed, her words tumbling out between hiccuping breaths. "He said he never wanted a baby. He said I was crazy for telling you before we had figured things out. He said I was trying to trap him." I waited, saying nothing. "I made a terrible mistake," she continued, pressing her hand against the door. "I'm not even sure I am pregnant. I just thought. I thought he would commit if he believed I was. It was stupid. I was stupid. Please let me in, Cade. We need to talk." "There is nothing to talk about," I replied. "You made your choice." "It was just a test," she exclaimed, a new angle emerging through her tears. "I wanted to see how much you really loved me, if you would fight for me. And you just said congratulations and let me walk away. What kind of man does that?" In that moment, every manipulation, every lie of our relationship crystallized before me. This woman had deliberately inflicted pain to test my love. Or she was lying now to salvage her situation. Either way, she was revealing herself fully, and what I saw repulsed me. "The kind of man who respects himself," I finally answered. "The kind who will not be manipulated or gaslit anymore. The kind who deserves better than what you are offering. You cannot do this to me." She hissed, her sadness suddenly transforming into rage. "I gave you 3 years of my life, and I gave you honesty, fidelity, and respect," I countered, "none of which you returned. Please leave now, or I will call security." She began shouting, then loud enough to wake my neighbors. True to my word, I called the building's security desk. 2 officers arrived within minutes and gently but firmly escorted a still screaming Megan out of the building. I watched through the window as they walked her to the street, where she eventually got into a rideshare and disappeared into the night. As I crawled back into bed, exhausted but clear-headed, I realized something important in choosing to protect myself rather than rescue Megan from the consequences of her actions. I had taken the first step toward healing. The weeks following Megan's dramatic exit were challenging in ways I had not anticipated. Our lives had been thoroughly intertwined, and disentangling them proved complicated. There were practical matters. Her name was still on the lease, we had furniture we had purchased together, and dozens of shared possessions needed to be divided. Then there were the social complications. Our friend circles overlapped significantly, forcing many people to choose sides or awkwardly straddle the divide. Most stood by me once. The full story emerged. But a few of Megan's longtime friends predictably took her part, spreading her version of events. That I had been controlling and emotionally distant, driving her into Anthony's arms. 2 weeks after our breakup, Megan's brother came to collect her things. He was apologetic and uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as he loaded boxes into his truck. "For what it is worth," he said, as he was leaving, "my parents are ashamed of how she handled this." That small acknowledgement meant more to me than I expected. Megan herself made multiple attempts to reconcile. She sent lengthy emails explaining that she and Anthony had been a mistake, that she had been confused and scared about our upcoming marriage. She had mutual friends reach out on her behalf, testing the waters for forgiveness. Her mother called me in tears, asking if there was any chance I could find it in my heart to give her daughter another opportunity. I remained firm but kind in my refusals. The most dramatic attempt came about a month after our split. I was at work focused on coding a complex feature for our main product when Megan appeared in the doorway of my office. How she had gotten past building security, I will never know. She looked different, thinner with dark circles under her eyes, but still beautiful in the way that had first captured my attention. 5 minutes, she pleaded when I looked up in surprise. "Just give me 5 minutes." Before I could respond, my team lead, Derek, appeared behind her, concern evident on his face. "Everything okay here, Cade?" he asked, giving Megan a pointed look. "Not really," I replied truthfully. "My ex-fiancée was just leaving." "I am not leaving until you talk to me," Megan insisted, her voice rising. "You owe me that much." What followed was mortifying, but ultimately affirming. As Megan's volume increased, attracting attention from around the open office, Derek calmly called security. My colleagues, who had heard bits and pieces of my situation over the past month, formed a protective barrier, several of them stepping between us until security arrived. My boss, a normally reserved woman in her 50s, personally escorted Megan out, informing her that she was barred from the premises. Later that afternoon, my boss called me into her office. Instead of the reprimand I half expected for bringing personal drama into the workplace, she expressed concern for my well-being and offered the company's full support, including access to counseling services. "You are too valuable to lose over something like this," she said simply. "Whatever you need to get through this, just ask." Her kindness was the catalyst I needed. That evening, I looked up therapists who specialized in relationship trauma and made an appointment. I also rejoined my old gym, which I had gradually stopped attending, as Megan had preferred us to exercise together at a different facility. Physical exertion became a crucial outlet for my anger and pain. I discovered new hobbies that Megan had never been interested in. I took a weekend woodworking class. I joined a hiking group that explored trails around Washington state. I volunteered at a local animal shelter walking dogs on Sunday mornings. Each new activity represented a step away from the life I had built around Megan and toward a new identity that was wholly my own. Perhaps most importantly, I reconnected with friends I had unintentionally neglected during my relationship. Jake flew out from Chicago and stayed for a long weekend. We went fishing, something we had enjoyed in college, but that Megan had found boring. I reached out to my old roommate from my first apartment in Seattle, and we resumed our tradition of watching football games together on Sundays. As the months passed, the acute pain of betrayal gradually transformed into something more manageable, a dull ache that would occasionally sharpen when triggered by a memory or a song, but that no longer dominated my daily experience. I threw myself into work, taking on a challenging project that had been languishing on our development roadmap. The focus it required was therapeutic, occupying my mind during the day and leaving me productively tired in the evenings. 6 months after the breakup, my dedication paid off with a promotion to senior development lead. The raise that came with it allowed me to move to a new apartment in a different neighborhood, one without memories of Megan lurking around every corner. The fresh start felt symbolic as well as practical. It was in my new building that I encountered Jennifer. She was leaving the community laundry room as I was entering, and we did the awkward dance of people trying to pass in a narrow hallway. She dropped a sock in the process, and as I bent to retrieve it, we started chatting. She lived 2 floors above me, had moved in just a month before I did, and worked as a pediatric nurse at the university hospital. We became casual friends, nodding hello when we passed in the lobby, or making small talk by the mailboxes. I learned she was 32, had grown up in Oregon, and had moved to Seattle after her own relationship had ended badly. "He cheated with my best friend," she told me one evening, as we happened to ride the elevator together. Classic right. There was something comforting about Jennifer's straightforward manner. She did not hide her pain or pretend to be completely over her ex, but neither did she seem defined by what had happened to her. We began having coffee occasionally, then progressed to dinner once in a while. There was no pressure, no expectations, just 2 people who understood each other's scars and respected the healing process. A year after Megan had walked out of my life, I realized something profound while having dinner with Jennifer at a small Italian restaurant near our building. I was happy. Not despite what had happened with Megan, but in some strange way because of it. The betrayal had forced me to rebuild myself from the foundation up, to examine what I truly wanted from life and relationships, and to establish boundaries that reflected my self-worth. As for Megan, I heard through mutual friends that things had not gone well for her. Anthony had indeed rejected her, and the pregnancy, which turned out to be real after all, ended in an early miscarriage. She had struggled professionally after changing jobs to avoid him taking a position that paid significantly less and offered fewer advancement opportunities. She had dated sporadically, but nothing serious had materialized. According to those still in contact with her, she often spoke of me with regret and a revisionist view of our relationship that cast it in a much more positive light than she had at the end. I felt no satisfaction in her struggles, but neither did I feel responsible for them. They were the natural consequences of choices she had made freely, just as my current contentment was the result of how I had chosen to respond to those same circumstances. Looking back now, I can honestly say that Megan's betrayal was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Not because I needed to be hurt or because I deserved pain, but because it revealed a truth I might otherwise have taken years to discover. Sometimes, losing what you thought you wanted leads you exactly where you need to be. If you have ever faced betrayal, or had your life unexpectedly turned upside down, share your story in the comments below. How did you rebuild? What lessons did you learn? Hit that like button. If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our greatest pain leads to our most authentic path. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the end of one chapter is just the beginning of a better one.